The wedding reception poured champagne for 200 guests except me. My mother set a plate of cold leftovers before me and said, "This is all the useless deserve." I stood to leave. To spare myself further humiliation, then the groom froze, staring at me. "Boss, what are you doing here?" In one breath, the room tilted on its axis. I was no longer the discarded daughter, but the woman holding files that could shred both their family tree and their bank accounts. And tonight, I wouldn't shed tears I'd turn on the screen. My name is Helena Carter, though everyone here calls me Nell, when they bother to call me anything at all. Table 23 sits in the darkest corner of Kingsmere Hall's grand ballroom, its back pressed against the service wall where waiters dodge in and out with champagne flutes that never reach my glass. The ivory tablecloth bears a faint coffee stain from some previous event, hastily covered with a doily that doesn't quite match. Even the centerpiece, a tired arrangement of baby's breath and carnations, looks salvaged from the lobby. The chandeliers drip crystal light everywhere but here. I watch it pool on Madison's dress as she glides between tables, her laughter tinkling like the champagne glasses she lifts in endless toasts. My sister, the bride, hasn't looked in my direction once tonight. Neither has Douglas, our father, though I catch him stealing glances when he thinks no one's watching, his fingers worrying the stem of his glass. But it's Lorraine who commands the room like a general surveying her victory. My mother weaves through the crowd in her mother-of-the-bride couture, a shade of champagne that cost more than most cars accepting compliments with practiced grace. When she finally approaches my exile corner, her heels click against the marble like a countdown. Still sulking, she sets the plate before me with deliberate force. The porcelain clatters against the table, drawing eyes from nearby tables before they quickly look away. On it, congealed mashed potatoes, a grayish slice of beef already curling at the edges, green beans that have surrendered their color to time. The sauce has formed a skin. "The kitchen was going to throw it out," she continues, loud enough for table 22 to hear. "But I thought waste not, want not. After all, we've already spent so much on guests who actually matter." The couple at the adjacent table shifts uncomfortably. The woman touches her pearls. The man becomes fascinated with his cufflinks. They know what they're witnessing, but etiquette demands they pretend otherwise. I study the plate with the same detachment I use for quarterly reports. Calculate the deliberateness of this moment, not just the leftovers, but the timing, the volume, the positioning where maximum witnesses can observe my humiliation while maintaining plausible deniability. Lorraine has always been a master of the public wound. Nothing to say. She leans closer, and I catch her perfume. Chanel No. 5, same as always, though tonight it mingles with something sharper. Satisfaction, perhaps. 20 years of silence, and still nothing. At least Madison knows how to be grateful. Behind her, the reception continues its orchestrated perfection. The band slides into something classic and safe Sinatra, maybe while couples drift toward the dance floor. The photographer captures moments that will look flawless in albums Lucas spinning Madison. Her train swirling like cream and coffee. Douglas raising his glass in yet another toast. Cousins and colleagues arranged in careful hierarchies of importance. I don't belong in those pictures. I haven't belonged in any family photo for over a decade. Not since I turned 18, and Lorraine made it clear that my invitation to exist under her roof had expired. "Adults make their own way," she'd said then, the same week she'd thrown Madison a birthday party that cost more than my college tuition. The beef on my plate has the texture of leather. I cut a piece anyway, raise it to my mouth, chew slowly, let her see that even her leftovers can't break me. Around us, the tables gleam with real silverware and crystal, each place setting a small fortune. The irony isn't lost on me this temple to excess, and here I sit with scraps. "You could have tried harder," Lorraine says. Adjusting her bracelet diamonds catch the light like tears. "Could have been someone. Instead, you insist on this. Whatever it is you do, office work." She pronounces it like a disease. Office work, if she only knew. But that's the point she doesn't know, because she never asked. never looked beyond her own reflection long enough to see what I was building in the shadows she cast. The name Helena Carter appears nowhere in her social circles. Helena Carter Wells. However, that name carries weight in boardrooms she'll never enter. A waiter hovers nearby, champagne bottle poised. Lorraine waves him away from my table with a gesture so small, so practiced. He might think he imagined the instruction, but I see it. I see everything from table 23, this perfect vantage point for observation. How Madison's smile tightens when certain guests approach. How Lucas's jaw clenches when Douglas attempts another rambling toast. How the wedding planner keeps checking her phone. Her expression cycling through stages of barely contained panic. I should go. The words come out steady, controlled. I set down my fork with deliberate calm. Dab my lips with the paper napkin. Of course it's paper, not cloth like the other tables. Yes, Lorraine agrees, too quickly. That would be best. We wouldn't want you to. But she doesn't finish, because that's when Lucas sees me, really sees me. For the first time tonight. He's been making rounds with Madison, playing the perfect groom. But something makes him glance toward the shadows where table 23 huddles. His champagne glass stops halfway to his lips. Color drains from his face like water from a tub. Our eyes lock across the wasteland of his wedding reception, and I watch recognition bloom like a bruise. He knows that face. He's seen it every Monday morning for the past 18 months. Running meetings where million-dollar decisions hang on my approval, where his proposals live or die by my pen stroke. The glass slips from his hand. Crystal shatters against marble. The sound slicing through Sinatra and small talk like a scalpel. The entire room turns, Madison included, to see what's broken. But Lucas isn't looking at the glass. He's looking at me, and his mouth is already forming the words that will shatter so much more than crystal. The shattered glass creates a perfect silence, crystalline and sharp. In that pause before chaos, I remain seated at table 23, hands folded, watching the shock ripple outward from Lucas like disturbed water. I've learned to read rooms the way others read spreadsheets, every micro-expression a data point, every gesture a leading indicator. Lorraine's face cycles through confusion to irritation. She hasn't connected the dots yet, but her social radar picks up the disturbance. Madison rushes to Lucas, her train catching on a chair. Yanking her back for a moment, a puppet jerked by its strings. The wedding planner materializes with towels and apologies, but Lucas remains frozen, staring at me like I'm a ghost at the feast. Which, in a way, I am. I've spent 14 years learning to navigate shadows, to read the unguarded moments when people think no one's watching. It's a skill born of necessity, honed by exile. At 18, Lorraine didn't just cut off my college fund, she performed a surgical extraction of my existence from the family narrative. No announcement, no drama. One day I simply wasn't included anymore. Not in the Christmas card photos, not in the group texts, not in the stories she told at her charity luncheons about her daughter. Singular, always singular. The waitstaff had swept away the glass shards now, but the tension remains, glittering in the air. I take a sip of water flat, no lemon, another small slight, and let my mind drift back to those first brutal months. 3 jobs, pre-dawn shifts at a bakery, afternoons filing paperwork at a law firm, nights cleaning offices in the very building where I now command a corner suite. My fingers remember the ache of kneading dough, the paper cuts from endless filing, the chemical burn of industrial cleaners. Madison had been in private school then, complaining about the stress of choosing between Yale and Princeton. The same week I'd eaten nothing but rice and stolen sugar packets. She'd posted photos from her spa weekend in Scottsdale. "Self-care is healthcare," the caption read. Lorraine had liked it within minutes. I learned to budget my anger like everything else carefully, strategically, each slight catalogued but not dwelt upon. Energy was currency, and I couldn't afford to spend it on resentment. Not when rent was due, not when I had night classes to attend with eyes burning from exhaustion, not when I was building something they couldn't see from their perch atop inherited privilege. "Nell!" Douglas appears at my table, hovering like he's afraid to fully commit to the interaction. My father, though the term feels generous for a man who mastered the art of being present, but not there. Are you? How are you? I'm well. True enough, wellness, I've learned, has nothing to do with happiness. He shifts his weight, glances back toward Lorraine, who's now corralling Lucas with the efficiency of a border collie. Your mother, she's... I know what she is. The words come out sharper than intended. Douglas flinches, and for a moment I see him clearly not the patriarch he plays at these events, but a man who chose the path of least resistance so many times it became his only road. There's something in his eyes, though, a flicker of, what, regret recognition, or just the weighted exhaustion of a man who knows he's complicit in crimes he lacks the courage to name. I put something aside, he says quietly. Words rushed like he's stealing this moment. Years ago, before... He stops, jaw working. It's not enough, not nearly, but it's yours. Has been since you were 16. The papers are in my study. If you ever... Douglas? Lorraine's voice cuts through like a blade. She's managed to steer Lucas away from the spill site, but her eyes are fixed on us, on Douglas, specifically, with a look that promises consequences. The Weatherbys are asking for you. He straightens automatically, decades of trained response. But before he goes, his hand brushes the table near mine, not quite touching, but close. The combination is your real birthday, he murmurs, not the one she tells people. Then he's gone, absorbed back into the machinery of the reception, and I'm left processing this information, my real birthday, because of course Lorraine would change even that, shaving 2 years off my age when Madison came along, so the gap between us would seem smaller, so her narrative of 2 daughters, practically twins, would sell better at her book club. I know exactly which safe he means, the one in his study that Lorraine pretends doesn't exist. Behind the portrait of her grandmother, a woman who'd built the fortune Lorraine now deploys like a weapon. Another woman erased from her own story, reduced to a checkbook and a legacy to be leveraged. The band strikes up something contemporary Bruno Mars, maybe, and the younger guests flood the dance floor. Madison's sorority sisters form a squealing cluster, pulling her into their midst, while Lucas remains notably absent. I spot him near the bar, downing what appears to be straight whiskey while the wedding planner hovers anxiously. He knows he's blown something wide open. He just doesn't know how wide or how deep. Because Lucas Hale only knows Helena Carter Wells, the woman who restructured his entire division, who caught the discrepancies in his budget proposals that would have tanked his career, who promoted him anyway because she values competence over compliance. He knows his boss brilliant, demanding, fair. He doesn't know Nell, the discarded daughter nursing table scraps in the corner. The cognitive dissonance must be staggering. I could leave now, slip out while Lorraine's distracted, while the party spins on without me. It would be the path of least resistance, the one Douglas would take. But I'm not Douglas. I'm not even Nell anymore. Not really. That girl desperate, hungry, afraid she served her purpose. She survived long enough to become someone else. The Iron Ledger, that's what they call me at Armitage and Vale, though never to my face, coined by someone in accounting who noticed I caught every irregularity, every attempted shortcut. They mean it as a warning, maybe even an insult. They don't understand that when you've counted every penny for survival, when you've weighed the cost of eating today against eating tomorrow, financial vigilance becomes more than a skill. It becomes a language, and I'm fluent. Movement in my peripheral vision, the wedding planner approaches with the determined stride of someone about to manage a situation, but she stops short, something in my expression giving her pause. I know that look. I've worn it in boardrooms when the numbers don't lie and someone has to deliver truth to power. Is there, she begins, then recalibrates. Would you like anything from the bar, perhaps? Or the dessert table is about to... No. She retreats, and I return to my observation post. Madison's dancing now, laughing at something one of her friends says. The light catches her necklace, our grandmother's pearls, the ones Lorraine claimed were lost in a move. So many things got lost when I turned 18. My childhood photos, my grandmother's letters, my place at the table. But not everything can be erased. Paper trails have a way of surviving, especially when you know where to look, when you have access to systems that cross-reference data. When your job involves tracking down financial irregularities across decades of corporate mergers and acquisitions, when you discover, quite by accident, that your sister's official birthday doesn't match her hospital records, that your mother's maiden name appears on property transfers in counties where she claims never to have lived. That money meant for education moved in patterns that would make any auditor's eyes narrow. I didn't go looking for secrets, but secrets, I've learned, have a way of finding those who know how to read between lines. And I've been reading between lines since I was 18, parsing the subtext of my exile, decoding the logic of my erasure. The music swells, the party spins, and I sit at table 23 with my cold leftovers and my careful observations. Lorraine thinks she's won something tonight. She thinks this public humiliation is her masterstroke, her final proof that I am what she's always said nothing, no one, not worth the space I occupy. She's wrong. I'm exactly where I need to be. The name Helena Carter appears on no family Christmas cards, no wedding invitations, no society pages. It died the day I turned 18, buried under Lorraine's practiced indifference. But Helena Carter Wells, she was born in a different world entirely, one Lorraine would never think to search. The hyphen came from my grandmother's maiden name, Wells, a small rebellion that became a resurrection. When I filled out that first application at Armitage and Vale, fresh from my night school MBA, fingers still cramped from years of minimum wage labor, I wrote it with the deliberation of someone choosing their own baptism. Helena Carter Wells, reborn in paperwork, sanctified by corporate letterhead. 7 years. That's how long I've lived this double life, though double implies some kind of balance. There's no balance here. There's the tissue-thin existence of Nell, trotted out for obligatory family gatherings where I hover at the edges like a bad smell. And there's Helena Carter Wells, who arrives at the office before dawn and leaves after the cleaners, who built an empire of efficiency one spreadsheet at a time. The transformation wasn't sudden. Survival rarely is. First came the entry-level position in accounts receivable, grinding through invoices while my supervisor took credit for my catches. I remember the exact moment I decided to stop being grateful for scraps standing in the break room, listening to executives complain about their ski trips while I calculated whether I could afford both lunch and bus fare. Something crystallized then, hard and bright as the diamonds Lorraine waves like weapons. I would not just survive, I would surpass. The Armitage and Vale building rises 30 floors above the financial district, glass and steel and ambition. My office sits on 28, corner view, the kind of space that announces its occupant matters. The brass nameplate reads, Helena Carter Wells, Acting Chief Operating Officer, acting, because the board hasn't confirmed me yet, acting, because I'm still proving what everyone else inherited by birthright. But in that office, I'm not acting at all. My team knows this. They've learned to read my silences, to prepare for the questions I'll ask before I ask them. When I restructured the Midwest division, cutting redundancies with surgical precision, they called me cold. When those changes saved 40 jobs that would have been lost to bankruptcy, they called me nothing at all. Success, I've learned, is often met with silence from those who predicted failure. Lucas learned this during his first presentation to me. He'd come in cocky, all Harvard MBA confidence and family connections, pitching a marketing strategy built on assumptions and wishful thinking. I let him finish, then dissected every flaw with the same methodical care I once used scrubbing office floors. His face had gone through the same phases as Lorraine's tonight: confusion, irritation, then something closer to fear. Redo it, I'd said, and this time, use actual data. He did. Came back with something brilliant. Actually, that's when I knew he had potential, not because of his first effort, but because of his second, because he could take criticism without crumbling, could rebuild without resentment. So few can. I promoted him 6 months later, doubled his salary, gave him the kind of opportunity that changes trajectories. He never asked why someone named Carter Wells would show such interest in developing talent. never connected the dots between his boss and the shadow at his future in-laws' gatherings. Why would he? The woman who signs his reviews wears Armani, not department store clearance. She speaks in quarterly projections and market analyses, not in careful silences. She exists in a world where merit matters more than maiden names, where genealogy bows to ROI. The Iron Ledger. The nickname followed my reputation through the building like a contrail. First whispered by a junior analyst who tried to slip personal expenses through a project budget, then adopted by others who learned that nothing escaped my review. They think it refers only to my attention to detail, my intolerance for financial creativity. They don't understand it goes deeper. When you've survived on $70 for 2 weeks, when you've chosen between electricity and food, you develop an intimate relationship with numbers. They stop being abstractions. Each digit represents something real: a meal, a bus ride, a textbook, a chance. You learn to see waste like a neon sign, inefficiency like a personal insult. That analyst who tried to expense his girlfriend's dinner, I didn't fire him. I called him in, showed him exactly how his attempted theft, because that's what it was. Theft would have impacted the departmental budget, how it would have meant no intern program next quarter, how those internships were lifelines for kids like I'd been, working 3 jobs to pay for school. He resigned 2 weeks later, but before he left, he stopped by my office. "You were right," he said, "about all of it." I always am. When it comes to the numbers, they don't lie, don't play favorites, don't care about your last name or your mother's social standing. They are what they are, immutable and honest in ways people rarely manage. The investigation into my family's finances started accidentally. A routine audit of a shell company that had once contracted with Armitage and Vail. Standard due diligence, the kind of archaeological dig we do before major mergers. But the name on one of the old contracts made me pause. Lorraine's maiden name, from before she married into the Carter fortune. Curiosity, not vengeance, made me dig deeper. Professional habits kicked in. Follow the money, trace the patterns, document everything. What I found was a masterclass in financial manipulation, decades of careful redirections and paper trails that led nowhere until you knew which stones to turn. Madison's trust fund, established by our father's parents, drained systematically, recorded as educational expenses that somehow never resulted in tuition payments, property transfers in counties where no Carter had ever lived, but where a young woman named Madison Hale had been born to parents who died in a car accident when she was 2. Adoption papers filed 3 months later, Lorraine's signature careful and precise. The truth assembled itself like a spreadsheet, each cell revealing another calculation. Lorraine hadn't just adopted Madison, she'd acquired her, complete with a modest inheritance that became significantly less modest once properly invested. Or it would have, if those investments hadn't been redirected into Lorraine's own accounts, disguised as childcare costs that exceeded most people's mortgages. I documented everything with the same meticulous care I apply to corporate audits. Not because I planned to use it, knowledge itself was enough then, a secret counterweight to years of public dismissal, but because documentation is what I do, it's who I am. The Iron Ledger. They have no idea how deep that identity runs, how it was forged in the gap between who I was supposed to be and who I had to become, between the girl who deserved leftovers and the woman who reviews million-dollar budgets before breakfast. Lucas is watching me again from across the reception hall. He's abandoned his post at the bar, seems to be working up the courage to approach. His new wife clings to his arm, but his eyes keep drifting to table 23, to the anomaly in his carefully ordered world. I can see him trying to reconcile it, boss and sister-in-law, Helena Carter Wells and Nell, the woman who controls his career and the ghost at the family gathering. The cognitive dissonance must be excruciating. Good. Let him sit with that discomfort. Let him marinate in the realization that he never really knew either of us, not his boss, not his bride, that the world is full of shadows and parallel lives, of people who build themselves from scratch, while others inherit their identities wholesale. The band announces the father-daughter dance. Douglas takes Madison's hand with practiced grace, and they sway to something classical and forgettable. Lorraine watches from the sidelines, her expression soft with satisfaction. The perfect family portrait, minus one inconvenient detail. But I'm not inconvenient anymore. I'm inevitable. Because tomorrow, Lucas will have to return to work, will have to sit in meetings I run, implement strategies I approve, exist in the professional world I've carved out with my own hands. The secret's out now. He knows who I am, even if he doesn't understand what that means yet. And secrets, I've learned, have a way of spreading, like wine stains, like audit trails, like the truth, which always finds its way to the surface. The iron ledger doesn't forge entries. She just makes sure every column balances in the end. The father-daughter dance ends with polite applause. I push back my chair, the metal legs scraping against marble with a sound like fingernails on glass. It's time to go. I've endured enough theater for one evening, played my role as the family embarrassment with Oscar-worthy commitment. My exit will be clean. Dignified everything this night hasn't been. But physics has other plans, or maybe it's just karma, finally deciding to show its hand. I'm 3 steps from table 23 when Lucas breaks free from Madison's orbit. He moves with the determined stride of a man who's made a career out of quick decisions. Even if this one might end it, the crowd parts unconsciously. Something about his expression warns them this isn't a moment for small talk. "Boss," he says, loud enough to carry, not Helena, not Nell, boss. The word hangs in the air like a flare, bright and impossible to ignore. What are you doing here? Time doesn't stop. That's a movie fiction, but it does stretch, like taffy pulled to the breaking point. I watch awareness ripple through the reception hall in real-time, heads turning, conversations dying mid-sentence, champagne flutes freezing halfway to lips, 200 guests become an audience, and Lucas just delivered the opening line. Madison arrives at his elbow, tulle rustling with her urgency. "Honey, what's wrong? Who are you?" Her voice cuts off as she actually looks at me, really looks, maybe for the first time all night. I watch her process what she sees, not the shabby relative hidden at table 23, but someone her new husband addresses with reflexive deference. "I was just leaving," I say, keeping my voice level, professional, the same tone I use to end meetings that have outlived their usefulness. "Boss," Madison repeats, her voice climbing toward hysteria. "Lucas, why are you calling her? She's nobody. She's just Nell. She's the acting COO of Armitage and Vale." The words fall from Lucas's mouth like stones into still water. Each one creates its own ripple, its own expanding circle of impact. My boss. The woman who... He stops, finally seeming to realize what he's done, what he's doing. But momentum's a funny thing. Once started, it demands completion. Christ, you're Madison's sister. You're how did I not... Lucas? Madison's grip on his arm tightens enough to wrinkle his jacket. "Stop talking." But he can't. I can see it in his eyes, the compulsive need to reconcile these two realities, to make sense of a world that just revealed itself as fundamentally different than he believed. It's the same expression he wore when I showed him how his first marketing proposal would have bankrupted the entire Midwest division. Lorraine materializes like smoke, drawn by the disturbance in her carefully orchestrated evening. She takes in the scene Lucas's pallor, Madison's panic, my perfect stillness, and her social instincts kick in before her brain can fully process the threat. "Lucas, darling," she says, voice dripping honey over arsenic. "I think you've had a bit too much champagne. Perhaps some air." "She's my boss," he repeats, louder this time. The word seems to be stuck, the only one his brain can produce. "Helena Carter Wells. She runs half the company. He turns back to me, and there's something almost pleading in his expression. "Why didn't you say anything? All those family dinners where they talked about you like..." "Like what?" I ask quietly. The question stops him cold, because how do you finish that sentence in front of 200 wedding guests? Like you were nothing, like you were a failure, like you were a cautionary tale told to motivate Madison toward greater heights. Douglas appears in my peripheral vision, hovering near a pillar. His face has gone the color of old paper, and I can see him calculating, always calculating, never acting. The Weatherbys stand nearby, pretending to admire a flower arrangement while obviously straining to hear every word. The wedding photographer has lowered his camera, recognizing that whatever's happening here won't make the album. "This is a misunderstanding," Lorraine announces to the growing audience. Her damage control mode kicks in, smooth as silk. "Family joke. You know how it is. Nell likes to exaggerate her little job." "Little job," Lucas laughs, but there's no humor in it. "She controls a budget bigger than this entire wedding cost, times 1,000. She's the youngest acting C-suite executive in the company's history. He stops again, awareness finally catching up with his mouth. But it's too late, far too late. The silence that follows has weight, like air before a thunderstorm. I can feel it pressing against my skin, electric with potential energy. 200 pairs of eyes shift between us, the golden couple and the exile, the favorite daughter and the forgotten one, the bride and the woman who apparently signs the groom's paychecks. "You work together," Madison says slowly, like she's testing the words for sharp edges. "You've worked together this whole time, and neither of you ever." "Professional boundaries," I say simply, which is true, as far as it goes. I've never discussed my personal life at the office, never displayed family photos or mentioned weekend plans. Helena Carter Wells exists in a universe entirely separate from Nell Carter, or she did, until 60 seconds ago. "Professional," Lorraine spits the word like it's profane. "Is that what you call it? Sneaking around? Hiding behind a fake name?" "It's not fake." The correction comes out sharper than intended. Wells was grandmother's name, the one whose portrait hangs in Douglas's study, the one who built the fortune you've been living off for 30 years. Another ripple. The Weatherbys exchange glances. Someone whispers to their +1. Information spreads through crowds like wildfire, and this revelation that the family disappointment carries the name of the family matriarch is pure accelerant. "You have no right," Lorraine starts, but Lucas interrupts. "She has every right." He's found his footing now. The initial shock giving way to something else. Understanding, maybe, or just the dawning realization of how thoroughly he's been played by all parties. She earned that position, earned it. While everyone here was talking about her like she was some kind of failure, she was building. "Stop," Madison's voice cracks. "Just stop. This is my wedding, mine, and you're ruining it with this, whatever this is." She's not wrong. The carefully choreographed evening lies in pieces around us, shattered as thoroughly as Lucas's champagne flute. The band has stopped playing. The caterers hover in doorways, unsure whether to continue service. The wedding planner looks like she's considering a career change. And I stand in the center of it all, still wearing my department store dress, still radiating the calm that comes from having nothing left to lose. Because that's the secret Lorraine never understood. When you've already been erased, you become impossible to diminish. When you've built yourself from scratch, no one can threaten your foundations. "I should go," I say again, and this time I mean it. Not fleeing, departing. There's a difference, though I doubt anyone here would recognize it. But as I turn to leave, Lucas says something that stops me cold. "The Singapore project." 3 words, that's all. But I see the moment Lorraine processes them. See her expression shift from damage control to something sharper, because the Singapore project has been in the society pages, not the business section, but the ones she actually reads, the ones that breathlessly reported on Armitage and Vale's expansion into Asian markets, the billion-dollar deal that would reshape the company's future. The deal I'm leading. "That's you," Lucas continues, his voice steadier now. "You're running the Singapore project, the whole thing," the Journal said. "The Journal says a lot of things," I interrupt, "but the damage is done." I can see it in the way Lorraine's guests are looking at me now, not with pity or secondhand embarrassment, but with the kind of interest reserved for people who matter in ways that count. Money, power, influence, the holy trinity of Lorraine's social circle. And suddenly I'm speaking their language. "Well," someone says into the silence, Weatherby, probably, though I don't turn to look. Isn't that interesting? Interesting. Such a useful word. So many meanings packed into 4 syllables. Interesting like a car crash. Interesting like a hostile takeover. Interesting like discovering the ugly duckling was never a duckling at all. Madison makes a sound somewhere between a sob and a scream. It's my wedding. And that's when I do something I haven't done in 14 years. I smile, not the careful, practiced expression I wear in boardrooms. Something real and terrible and absolutely honest. Yes, I agree. It is. Then I walk out, leaving behind the wreckage of Lorraine's perfect evening and the echo of a single word that changed everything. Boss, the valet brings my car a respectable Lexus. Nothing flashy enough to draw attention, but reliable enough to trust. I sit in the driver's seat for a moment, letting the chaos of Kingsmere Hall fade in my rearview mirror. My hands are steady on the wheel. They've been steady for years, through worse moments than this. But my mind is already elsewhere. 3 weeks in the past, in the sterile office of Brennan and Associates, private investigators. The discovery had been accidental, a fluke of due diligence that turned into something else entirely. I'd hired the firm to investigate a potential vendor for the Singapore project, standard background checks on a company that seemed too good to be true, but Harold Brennan himself had called me back, voice careful over the phone. Ms. Carter-Wells, he'd said. We've completed the vendor investigation. They're clean, but during our research, we came across some irregularities in connected documentation. They involve the name Madison Hale, my sister's married name, or what would become her married name, once she wed Lucas. What kind of irregularities? The kind that usually indicate document fraud. Would you like us to pursue this further? I'd sat in my office, 28th floor, afternoon light streaming through windows that cost more than my first year's rent, and made a choice. Yes. The smell of ink was the first tell. Fresh ink has a particular scent, sharp, chemical, distinctly different from aged documents. When Brennan showed me the birth certificate, I could smell it even through the protective sleeve, but it was the font that damned it completely. Helvetica Neue, a typeface that didn't exist when Madison was supposedly born. Someone was careless, Brennan explained, sliding more documents across his desk. Or maybe they thought no one would ever look this closely. But once you start pulling threads, the threads led everywhere. Adoption papers with mismatched dates, transfer documents for a trust fund in Madison Hale's name, the young girl whose parents died in that car accident in Ridgeline County, the same Madison Hale whose modest inheritance had grown substantially in the months before a woman named Lorraine Carter filed for adoption. The forensic accountant found the interesting parts, Brennan continued, producing spreadsheets that told their own story, withdrawals labeled childcare that exceeded any reasonable cost, educational expenses that never matched any tuition payments, a systematic draining of funds that should have been held in trust until Madison turned 25. Except Madison never would turn 25, because Madison Hale had disappeared into the foster system after her parents' death, and Madison Carter had appeared 3 months later, complete with a birthday that made her 2 years younger and a family history scrubbed clean as fresh paper. I'd stared at the evidence bank statements, forged documents, a web of financial manipulations spanning 2 decades, and felt something click into place. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just the cold clarity of understanding. Lorraine hadn't just erased me from the family narrative. She'd written Madison into it, literally, with careful lies and redirected funds. What would you like me to do with this information? Brennan had asked. Document everything, triple verify, then seal it. And then wait. Because timing, I'd learned from 14 years of strategic planning, is everything. Information is just data until the moment it becomes leverage, and leverage without purpose is just destruction. I'd driven home that night the same way I'm driving now, carefully, thoughtfully, every turn deliberate. The investigation files sat in my safe for 3 weeks, while Madison posted about wedding preparations and dress fittings, while Lorraine orchestrated her perfect event, while I continued running the Singapore project and reviewing Lucas's proposals and existing in my parallel universe where none of this mattered. Until tonight, until a plate of cold leftovers and the word useless, and Lucas's shocked recognition collided into a moment of perfect clarity. Because I realized, sitting at table 23 with congealed gravy on my plate, that I wasn't investigating for revenge, I was investigating for truth. The same truth I seek in every audit, every financial review, every corporate investigation. The truth that lives in paper trails and bank transfers, in fonts that betray their age and signatures that don't quite match. My phone buzzes. 3 missed calls from Douglas, 2 from numbers I don't recognize, wedding guests, probably, who've somehow acquired my contact information. Nothing from Lorraine or Madison, but then, they don't have my real number. The one listed in family records goes to a voicemail I check quarterly, if that. I pull into my garage, a clean, organized space in a building where security knows me by name, and the doorman asks about the Singapore project with genuine interest. My apartment waits above, sparse but precise, everything chosen for function over sentiment. No family photos on the walls, no inherited furniture or heirloom china, just space that belongs entirely to me, bought with money I earned, furnished with choices I made. The safe sits behind a panel in my home office. Douglas was wrong about one thing: I don't need his combination or whatever he's hidden in his study. I've had my own resources for years now, my own legal protections. But I'm curious about what he thought worth preserving, what small rebellion he managed against Lorraine's total control. For tonight, though, the Brennan files stay sealed, evidence in waiting, because the evening's revelations, Lucas outing my identity, the public crack in Lorraine's facade, have started something that doesn't need my help to continue. Truth is like water. Once it finds a crack, it keeps flowing. I pour myself a glass of wine, good wine, chosen because I like it, not for its label or price, and stand at my window. The city spreads below, lights like scattered diamonds, each one representing someone's life, someone's choices, someone's secrets. Madison isn't evil. This is important to remember. She's a victim too, in her way. A child absorbed into Lorraine's narrative so completely she probably doesn't remember being anyone else. The trust fund that should have been hers, that should have paid for real education and real opportunities, instead became Lorraine's slush fund for maintaining appearances. But Madison also chose to continue the cruelty, chose to treat me as less than, to participate in Lorraine's erasure, to place me at table 23 with leftovers while she glided through her princess fantasy. Victims can become perpetrators. The abused can abuse. These things are not mutually exclusive. My laptop powers on with a quiet chime. Emails already 3 from board members who were at the wedding. Carefully worded inquiries about the Singapore project that are really inquiries about me. About the woman they thought they knew versus the one they glimpsed tonight. About Helena Carter Wells and her connection to the Carter family they've social climbed around for years. I close the laptop without responding. Let them wonder. Let them recalculate their assumptions and alliances. The Singapore project moves forward regardless, and my position, acting or not, remains secure. Because that's the difference between inherited power and earned power. One exists at the pleasure of others' opinions. The other exists despite them. The wine tastes like dark cherries and possibility. I take another sip and think about fonts, about how something so small, the curve of a letter, the weight of a line can reveal everything, about how Lorraine, in all her careful planning, was undone by typography. There's poetry in that, or there would be, if I were the kind of person who believed in poetry. Instead, I believe in documentation, in evidence, in the inexorable march of truth toward light. Even when that light takes 14 years to dawn, the files in my safe contain enough to reshape the narrative completely to expose the adoption fraud, the financial manipulation, the systematic theft from a child who deserved better. But not tonight. Tonight, I've set something in motion that needs no further push from me. Lucas knows who I am now. The wedding guests know. By tomorrow, half of Lorraine's social circle will be dissecting every interaction they've ever had with the family. looking for signs they missed, revising their understanding of the Carter hierarchy. And Lorraine herself. She'll spend tonight in damage control mode, spinning stories, crafting explanations, trying to restore the narrative she's maintained for so long, but she'll also be wondering what else I know, what other shoes might drop, what documentation might exist in filing cabinets she can't access, in systems she doesn't understand, in the hands of a daughter she wrote off as worthless. The city lights blur and sharpen as clouds pass overhead. Somewhere across town, Madison is probably crying in her wedding dress, mascara running in careful rivers down her cheeks. Lucas is probably drinking, trying to reconcile the boss he respects with the family he's married into. Douglas is probably silent, locked in his study with whatever guilty secrets he's preserved. And Lorraine is probably afraid, for the first time in 20 years, genuinely afraid. Good. Fear, like truth, has a way of clarifying things, of stripping away pretense and revealing what lies beneath. And what lies beneath Lorraine's careful construction is a paper trail that leads back to a little girl named Madison Hale, whose modest trust fund became the seed money for a very different kind of family investment. I finish my wine and head to bed. Tomorrow brings the Singapore project, board meetings, the ordinary business of extraordinary responsibility. Tomorrow brings whatever fallout tonight has generated, whatever recalculations and realignments ripple out from Lucas's single word. But tonight I sleep the sleep of someone who knows exactly who they are, exactly what they've built, and exactly what documentation waits in their safe for the perfect moment to surface. The Iron Ledger keeps perfect records, even especially the ones written in disappeared ink. 3 days pass before Douglas appears at my office. Not the family home where Lorraine rules supreme, not some neutral restaurant where we might pretend at normal relations. He comes to my territory, to the 28th floor of Armitage and Vale, where Helena Carter Wells exists in full authority. Security calls up first, professional protocol even for a father. A Douglas Carter to see you, Ms. Carter Wells. He doesn't have an appointment. Send him up. I watch him enter through the glass doors, see him take in the space, the clean lines, the organized efficiency, the view that costs more than most people's homes. He looks smaller here, diminished by corporate architecture and his own choices. His shoulders carry the weight of someone who spent a lifetime being bent into shapes that served others' purposes. Helena, he says, then corrects himself. Nell? Either works. I gesture to the chairs across from my desk, but remain standing myself. A small power play, but necessary. This is my space, my rules. He sits carefully, like the leather might bite. His hands find each other in his lap, fingers interlacing in a gesture I remember from childhood, his tell when he's about to confess something Lorraine won't like. I suppose you know why I'm here. I can guess. The wedding was 3 days ago, long enough for Lorraine to cycle through denial and anger, not quite long enough to reach bargaining, so she sent you to gather intelligence. A ghost of a smile crosses his face. You always were observant, even as a child. You saw everything. The smile fades. I should have protected you from what you saw. Should have, didn't. I finally sit, matching his level now that the power dynamic is established. You mentioned something about a safe, about papers. His exhale is long, tired. I wasn't supposed to love you differently than Madison. Lorraine made that clear from the beginning. Equal treatment, equal opportunities, equal affection, except nothing was equal. Was it Madison was her project? You were... He struggles for words. Competition? Evidence, he corrects softly. Evidence that she'd had a life before Madison, a child before her perfect daughter. You complicated her narrative just by existing. So she erased me. She tried. Douglas reaches into his jacket, withdraws an envelope that's seen better days. I couldn't stop her. I told myself I was keeping the peace, maintaining stability for everyone's sake, but I could document things, preserve them, small rebellions. The envelope contains 3 items: a savings bond in my name, purchased when I was 16, matured now to a modest but meaningful sum, A letter in Douglas's careful handwriting, dated the day I turned 18, never sent, and a photograph I've never seen me at perhaps age 10, asleep on his shoulder in what looks like his study. There's more in the safe. He continues while I examine these artifacts of a father's constrained love. Your grandmother's journals. For one, the ones Lorraine claimed were water damaged in that basement flood. They're perfectly intact. She writes about building the company, about the choices she made. I thought you might want them, to understand where you come from. I know where I come from, but my voice lacks its usual edge. The photograph throws me the casual intimacy of it, the evidence of a moment when I was simply his daughter, nothing more or less. She wasn't always like this, Douglas says suddenly. Lorraine, when we met, she was different, ambitious, yes, but not cruel. That came later, after Madison, after she decided that perfection was possible if you just controlled all the variables. I was a variable she couldn't control. You were a reminder that life existed before her grand plan, that she'd been young once, had made impulsive choices, had been someone other than Madison's mother. He shifts in his chair, leather creaking. The trust fund transfers, you know about those. I keep my expression neutral. What about them? I signed off on them, everyone. She told me they were for Madison's education, for her future. I wanted to believe it, chose to believe it, but I kept copies of everything, just in case. They're in the safe too. Now that's interesting. Douglas's documentation would carry different weight than mine's spousal testimony versus corporate investigation. But more than that, it reveals something I hadn't expected. He'd been keeping his own records, running his own parallel truth alongside Lorraine's fiction. Why tell me this now? He meets my eyes for the first time since entering. Because Lucas asked me a question at the wedding, after you left, after the chaos died down. He asked if I was proud of you, and I realized I'd never said it. Not once in 14 years. I'd let Lorraine's narrative become so dominant that I'd forgotten I was allowed to have my own opinion. And I am proud, immensely. His voice cracks slightly. The Singapore project, I read about it in the journal. What you've built here, what you've become despite everything. Your grandmother would have loved you, would have seen herself in you. She never knew me. I was too young when she died. But she knew what it was like to build something from nothing, to be underestimated, to turn dismissal into fuel. He stands, the meeting drawing to its natural close. The combination is your real birthday month, day and year, October 15th, not the 17th like Lorraine tells people. She changed it to make the gap with Madison seem smaller, more plausible. Even my birthday was edited. The revision runs so deep it touches everything, reshapes the fundamental facts of my existence. But here's Douglas, offering corrections, small ones, maybe, but corrections nonetheless. Why didn't you ever correct her at family events, when she gave the wrong date? Because correction required confrontation, and confrontation meant, he trails off, but I can fill in the blanks. Confrontation meant Lorraine's fury, meant cold silences, and withheld affection, meant making waves in the calm surface of their constructed life. So you chose her comfort over my truth? Yes, no excuses, no justification, just acknowledgement. I chose the path of least resistance every time, and every time, that path led further away from you. There's nothing to say to that. Some truths don't require response, just recognition. I stand, signaling the end of our meeting, but something makes me add, the offer stands. He pauses at the door. What offer? To be proud. If you want to be proud of Helena Carter Wells, of what I've built and who I've become, that offer stands, but it comes with conditions. Which are, no more silence, no more choosing Lorraine's narrative over truth, no more letting her erase me at family gatherings or edit my history for convenience. If you want to be my father, completely. His hand tightens on the doorframe. She won't make that easy. Nothing about me has ever been easy. That's never stopped me before. He nods slowly, processing this. The Singapore project, when do you leave? 6 weeks. Could we have dinner before then, just us? Dinner. Such a simple thing. A basic unit of family connection. We haven't shared a meal without Lorraine's oversight in over a decade. The request hangs between us, fragile with possibility. I'll consider it. He accepts this, understanding that consideration is more than he's earned. After he leaves, I sit with his envelope, studying the photograph. 10-year-old me, safe against his shoulder, unaware that safety was temporary, that in 8 years, I'd be on my own, that love could be compartmentalized, rationed out according to someone else's comfort, but also unaware of what I'd become, of the strength that would grow from abandonment, the clarity that would come from exclusion. 10-year-old me didn't know that someday she'd sit in a corner office, running projects that shaped global markets, didn't know that the family that discarded her would one day realize the magnitude of their miscalculation. The savings bond is worth perhaps $50,000 now, nothing life-changing at my current income level, but everything to an 18-year-old suddenly cut off from support. The letter I'll read later, in private, where whatever words Douglas couldn't say to my face can't ambush me during work hours. But the photograph I prop against my computer monitor, a small rebellion of my own, evidence that I existed before erasure, proof that somewhere beneath his capitulation, Douglas remembered loving me. It's not enough, not nearly enough to balance 14 years of absence, of silence, of choosing Lorraine's comfort over my existence, but it's something, a crack in the wall, letting light through. And if there's anything I've learned from forensic accounting, from tracking financial irregularities across decades of documentation, it's that once you find one crack, others follow. Truth has momentum, evidence accumulates, and sometimes, the smallest rebellion a photograph saved, a document preserved, a combination remembered becomes the key to everything. I have 6 weeks before Singapore, 6 weeks to decide what to do with Douglas's offerings, with Brennan's investigation files, with the truth that's starting to seep through Lorraine's carefully constructed dam. 6 weeks to decide if I want justice or just distance. But for now, I return to my spreadsheets, my projections, my real work. The Singapore project doesn't care about family drama or wedding revelations. The numbers demand attention, precision, the kind of focus that built Helena Carter Wells from the ashes of Nell Carter. The photograph watches me work, a silent witness to both who I was and who I've become. And for the first time in 14 years, that feels like enough. The invitation arrives 2 weeks later, expensive cardstock, the color of old ivory. The Brookridge Children's Hospital annual gala requests the honor of your presence. Lorraine chairs the board, has for years it's her crown jewel, the charity that launders her reputation into social currency. I know she didn't send this invitation. My name appears nowhere on their donor lists. But Lucas did. His business card falls out when I open the envelope, with 4 words on the back in his handwriting, "We need to talk." The gala is tomorrow night, black tie, $500 a plate, the kind of event where charity is performed rather than practiced. I could ignore it, should ignore it. The Singapore project demands attention, and I've successfully avoided family entanglements since the wedding. But something about the venue choice intrigues me. The Meridian Hotel's grand ballroom neutral territory with excellent acoustics and, more importantly, a state-of-the-art projection system I helped fund during last year's renovation. When Armitage and Vale made that donation, I insisted on certain specifications, the kind that would support comprehensive multimedia presentations. I make my decision and call my assistant, clear my calendar for tomorrow evening, and contact the Meridian's AV team. Tell them I'll need full access to the projection system during the gala. Shall I prepare a presentation? No, but have the legal department send over the Henderson files, the full audit. She doesn't question it. After 3 years, she knows how I work, that sometimes the best negotiations happen outside boardrooms. That leverage is most effective when deployed unexpectedly. The next evening, I arrive precisely at 8, not fashionably late like Madison would be, not nervously early like the old Nell might have been. I wear black, a simple sheath that cost more than 3 months of my first apartment. paired with the kind of understated jewelry that whispers rather than shouts. Professional armor for a personal war. The ballroom glitters with Brookridge's finest, clustered in conversational constellations that shift and realign based on invisible hierarchies. I spot Lorraine immediately. She's holding court near the main stage, resplendent in silver that catches the light like chainmail. Madison flanks her, though the radiance from her wedding has dimmed to something more fragile. No sign of Lucas yet. I take champagne I won't drink and position myself where I can observe. The skills that served me at table 23 work even better here, where I'm not hidden, but simply overlooked. Helena Carter-Wells might run board meetings, but at Lorraine's gala, I'm just another face in expensive shoes. Until I'm not. There you are. Lucas materializes at my elbow, looking like he's aged a year and 2 weeks. His tuxedo is perfectly tailored, but his eyes are haunted. Thank you for coming. You said we needed to talk. Not here. Follow me. He leads me through a service door into a small anteroom where extra chairs are stacked against the walls. The sound of the gala muffles to a distant hum. Lucas checks that we're alone, then turns to face me. I'm leaving her. The words hang between us like a confession. I keep my expression neutral, though internally I'm recalculating every assumption about this conversation. That's between you and Madison. No, it's not. He runs a hand through his hair, messing its careful styling. It's about integrity, about truth, about the fact that I've been working for you for 18 months and never knew you were being systematically erased by the family I was marrying into. My family situation has no bearing on your professional performance. Bullshit. The profanity surprises us both. Lucas never swears in professional settings. You promoted me, mentored me, taught me that numbers never lie, that documentation matters, that integrity isn't negotiable, and the whole time, I was sitting at dinners where they talked about you like you were some kind of failure, where Lorraine would make these cutting remarks about poor Nell and her little job and everyone would laugh. And you laughed too. Yes. He doesn't flinch from the admission. I did, because I didn't know, because I bought into their narrative without questioning it, because it was easier to believe their version than to wonder why someone they dismissed so completely never actually showed up to defend herself. Interesting. He's done his own analysis, reached his own conclusions. The Lucas who walked into my office 18 months ago wouldn't have had this kind of self-awareness. Maybe I taught him too well. What do you want from me? Absolution permission to leave your marriage. I'm not a priest or a counselor. I want you to know what I know. He pulls out his phone, scrolls to something. After the wedding, I started asking questions, real questions. Madison got defensive, said I was taking your side over family. But Lorraine got scared, and when people are scared, they make mistakes. He shows me the screen. Text messages between Madison and Lorraine, dated 3 days after the wedding. We need to move the trust documents, tomorrow. Why they're safe where they are. Because she knows things. Lucas said she runs investigations at that company. What if she investigates US? You're being paranoid. I'm being careful. Just do what I say. They moved them, Lucas continues. But I followed the paper trail, found the storage unit rental, the safety deposit box transfers, found more than they wanted me to find. Such as the fact that Madison knows, has known for years, about the adoption irregularities, about the trust fund, about where the money really went. She's not some innocent victim of Lorraine's manipulation. She's a co-conspirator. This shifts things. I'd built my analysis on the assumption of Madison's ignorance, her passive participation in my erasure. Active knowledge changes the calculus entirely. Why are you telling me this? Because in 2 minutes, Lorraine is going to take that stage and give her annual speech about the importance of charity, about helping vulnerable children, about integrity and compassion, and I can't sit there and applaud anymore, not knowing what I know, he pauses, not knowing who you really are and what they did to you. What they did to me is history. I survived it, succeeded despite it. That's not the point. His voice carries the passion of the newly converted. The point is, they're still doing it, still erasing you, still profiting from lies while preaching truth from podiums. And I helped. I sat at their table and validated their version of reality. The distant sound of microphone feedback tells us the speeches are beginning. Lorraine's voice carries through the walls, modulated into her public register warm, caring, authoritative. The voice of someone who's never missed a meal, never counted pennies, never been told they're worthless. There's something else, Lucas says quietly. I cross-referenced the charity's financial reports with the trust fund withdrawals. The dates match, the amounts match. She didn't just steal from Madison's inheritance, she washed it through the children's hospital, claimed it as charitable giving, got tax breaks on stolen money. Now that's new information, useful information, the kind that transforms personal grievance into prosecutable offense. Do you have documentation? Everything. He hands me a flash drive. Bank records, tax filings, charity deposits, 3 years' worth. I'm not just leaving Madison, I'm leaving with evidence, because you taught me that truth matters, that documentation matters, that integrity isn't negotiable, I finish. Yes, I did teach you that. Applause erupts from the ballroom. Lorraine must have delivered her opening remarks, the ones about dedication to vulnerable children. The irony is sharp enough to cut. What are you going to do? Lucas asks. I pocket the flash drive, feeling its weight despite its size. What I always do, review the data, verify the findings, make decisions based on facts rather than emotions. That's it. After everything Lucas, I use my boardroom voice, the one that ends discussions. Whatever you're imagining, some dramatic confrontation, some public revelation, that's not how I work. I'm not interested in theater. I'm interested in accuracy. But even as I say it, I'm thinking about the Meridian's projection system, about the files my assistant is holding, about the difference between theater and testimony. I should get back, he says finally. Madison will notice I'm gone. You're still pretending. Until the papers are filed, my lawyer says, he stops. It doesn't matter what my lawyer says. What matters is that I wanted you to know, that someone sees what they did, what they're doing, that someone besides you knows the truth. He leaves through the service door, returning to play his part one last time. I wait a full minute before following, time enough for him to rejoin Madison, to slip back into his role. But I don't return to the shadows of the ballroom's edges. Instead, I walk directly to the AV booth. The technician recognizes me from last year's donation ceremony. Ms. Carter-Wells, we weren't expecting you tonight. Plans change. I need access to the projection system. During the gala, but Mrs. Carter's presentation will proceed as scheduled. I just need to add something to the queue. A small addition to support her message about transparency and helping vulnerable children. My tone suggests this is routine, expected, authorized. He hesitates only a moment before stepping aside. I insert my own flash drive. Not Lucas's, not yet, but mine. The one my assistant prepared with the Henderson audit files. But I add something else. 3 images from Brennan's investigation. Not the full report, not the smoking guns. Just 3 documents, ready to display if needed. Madison's real birth certificate, a single trust fund withdrawal, and a charity deposit slip with a matching amount, dated the same day. Breadcrumbs, nothing more. But sometimes breadcrumbs are enough to start an avalanche. I return to the ballroom as Lorraine takes the stage for her keynote. She commands the microphone like she was born to it, painting pictures of need and compassion, of children who deserve better chances. The audience hangs on every word. Madison watches from the front table with practiced adoration. Lucas stares at his water glass. And I stand at the back, holding the remote the AV technician didn't realize he'd left logged into the system. One click would override Lorraine's presentation. One button would put truth on a screen too large to ignore. Power isn't always about using it. Sometimes it's about knowing you could. Lorraine reaches her crescendo, the part where she typically shows photos of smiling children helped by the hospital's programs. The screen behind her flickers to life, but instead of those carefully curated images, The first of my documents appears. Just for a second, maybe two, long enough for people to register that something's different, not long enough to read details. Then it's gone, replaced by the expected photos. Lorraine stumbles over her next line. Her eyes search the crowd, looking for the source of disruption. They find me just as I'm pocketing the remote. I don't smile, don't gloat, just meet her gaze steadily, letting her see what Lucas saw at the wedding. That I'm not the Nell she dismissed. That I'm someone else entirely. Someone with access to systems she doesn't understand. Documentation she can't control. Truth she can't edit. The speech continues, but the damage is done. Whispers ripple through the crowd. Phones come out. Photos are taken. By tomorrow, someone will have captured that momentary image. We'll start asking questions about trust funds and charity deposits. We'll pull threads that lead to unraveling. I leave before the applause. My work here is finished, not the dramatic revelation Lucas expected, but something more surgical, more precise, more like me. In the parking lot, I check my phone. 3 missed calls from Douglas, 2 from board members, 1 from Brennan. But it's the text from Lucas that makes me pause. She knows. She's terrified. Thank you. I delete it without responding. Whatever happens next between Lucas and Madison, between Lorraine and her carefully constructed world, isn't my concern. I've set truth in motion. Gravity will do the rest. The Singapore project launches in 4 weeks. Between now and then, I have empires to build, deals to close, work that matters more than family drama or delayed justice. But tonight, just for a moment, I allow myself to imagine Lorraine's face when she realizes the projection glitch wasn't random, when she understands that someone has documentation she thought was safely buried, when she grasps that the daughter she erased has access to platforms she can't control. It's not satisfaction I feel. It's simpler than that. It's balance. Finally, inevitably, balance. The unraveling begins with Madison's own hands. 3 days after the gala, she storms into my office without an appointment. Security calls, but I wave them off. Let her come. Let her bring whatever fury she's been fermenting since the charity event. My morning has been productive. 2 conference calls with Singapore, a successful board presentation. I can spare 20 minutes for family theater. She bursts through my door like weather, all wind and precipitation. Her designer bag swings wildly as she advances on my desk, and I notice her manicure is chipped. Madison never chips her manicure. You vindictive bitch! She slams her palms on my desk, trying for intimidation, but her hands shake, and the effect is more desperate than dangerous. You couldn't just leave, could you? Couldn't just accept your place and move on? My place. I close my laptop slowly, giving her my full attention. Which place would that be? Table 23, the service entrance. Or maybe nowhere at all. Isn't that where Lorraine prefers me? You know what I mean, but her voice wavers. The righteous anger she wrote up here is already dissipating, replaced by something more complex. You've ruined everything. Lucas left. The charity board is asking questions. Mother is terrified, I supply. She should be. Fraud has that effect on people. Madison's face cycles through expressions like a slot machine looking for the winning combination. She settles on wounded innocence. I don't know what you're talking about. No. I open my desk drawer, withdraw a folder I've been keeping for just this moment. Then perhaps you can explain this. The document I slide across is innocuous enough, a photocopy of a birthday card, handmade, childish, with crayon flowers around the edges. The inscription reads, Happy 8th birthday, Madison Love, Aunt Sarah. Madison goes white. Where did you get this? Your 8th birthday? Interesting number, since according to your official documents, you would have been 6, and according to the adoption records, you didn't have an Aunt Sarah. The Hales were only children. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I lean back in my chair, maintaining the calm that seems to unnerve her more than anger would. You've known all along. Known you were older than Lorraine claimed. Known about the trust fund that paid for your education. Known that my exile funded your elevation. Her hands find her phone, fumbling with the screen. I have evidence too, videos, recordings, things that will destroy your precious reputation. Go ahead, show me. She turns the phone toward me, finger hovering over the play button. The screen shows a video file titled Nell Truth. Her threat is clear whatever she's recorded. She thinks it's her nuclear option. Play it, I encourage. But first, let me share something with you about this office. See that screen? I point to the massive display that covers one wall. It's connected to our presentation system. Very sensitive. Sometimes it picks up wireless signals, mirrors devices without warning. Terrible security flaw. I've been meaning to have a T fix it. Madison's finger freezes above her phone. She glances at the screen, then back at me. The calculation is visible. Call my bluff and risk exposure, or retreat with her weapon unfired. Pride wins. She jabs the play button. The video springs to life on her phone and simultaneously blooms across my wall display. 40 inches of Madison in vivid clarity. But it's not me she's recorded. It's herself, drunk at what looks like her bachelorette party, laughing with friends about her plans. Doesn't even know I know. Past Madison slurs, champagne glass tilting dangerously. About the trust fund, about all of it. Mom made me promise never to tell. But fuck it. I'm getting married, I deserve nice things. I deserve that money. Not like that pathetic. Present Madison lunges for her phone, stabbing at the screen to stop the playback. But technology has momentum. The video continues for another excruciating 10 seconds. Her past self detailing exactly how much she knows about the financial fraud, how long she's known, how she justifies her participation. When it finally stops, the silence in my office is absolute. I didn't mean. Madison clutches her phone like a life preserver, though it just sank her ship. You tricked me. No. You played yourself. Literally. I stand, moving to the window. The city spreads below, indifferent to personal catastrophes. You came here thinking you had leverage, but leverage requires understanding what game you're playing. And Madison, you've never understood the game. I'll delete it, destroy it, deny everything. Go ahead, but you should know the building's security system records everything. Every device that connects to our network, every file that plays on our screens. I turn back to her. It will find it fascinating, as will the forensic accountants, and eventually, the investigators. She sags into a chair without invitation, the fight draining from her like air from a punctured tire, for the first time since childhood. I see my sister without her mask. She looks younger, lost, almost like the child she was when Lorraine found her. I didn't have a choice, she whispers. There's always a choice. No, you don't understand. When I found out when I was 16 and found the papers, Mom said if I told anyone, if I refused to play along, she'd send me back. Said the adoption could be reversed. Said I'd end up in foster care or worse. You were 16, well past the age when adoption reversal was a threat. She lied to you. I know that now. The words explode from her. Years of suppressed truth finally detonating. But I was scared. I was alone. And she was all I had. She said if I kept quiet, if I played the part, I'd have everything. Education, security, family. All I had to do was be the daughter she wanted. And I was the price. Madison's nod is microscopic. She said you were strong, said you'd be fine on your own, that you didn't need us the way I needed her, and I wanted to believe it, needed to believe it, so I did. The confession hangs between us, raw and irreversible. Part of me wants to feel sympathy. Madison was a child, manipulated by a master, but another part, the part forged in 3 jobs and night school and 14 years of exile, remembers every slight, every dismissal, every moment she chose Lorraine's lies over sisterhood. What do you want me to say? I ask finally. That I forgive you, that I understand, that it's all water under the bridge. I want... She stops. Seems to really see me for the first time. Not Nell the failure, not the ghost at family gatherings, but Helena Carter Wells, the woman who built herself without them, who succeeded not despite their cruelty but because of it. I want to know how you did it, how you became this, how you didn't let it break you. It did break me. The admission costs nothing now. Completely. Shattered every assumption I had about family, about love, about my place in the world. But here's what Lorraine never understood: when you break something completely, you get to choose how to rebuild it, and I rebuilt myself without any of you. Madison's phone buzzes. She glances at it, and her face changes. It's Mom. She knows I'm here. The phone rings. Lorraine's ringtone filling the office. Madison stares at it like it might bite. Answer it, I suggest. Put her on speaker. I can't. You can. You've been her puppet for 20 years. Don't you want to cut the strings? Madison's hand trembles as she accepts the call. Mom. Where are you? Lorraine's voice fills my office, sharp with panic. Security at that building says you went to the executive floor. Tell me you're not. I'm in Nell's office. The silence stretches like a held breath. Then, get out. Now. Whatever she's told you. Whatever she's threatening. She's not threatening anything, Madison interrupts. She's just showing me truth. The same truth you've been hiding for 20 years. Madison, sweetheart, you don't understand. I showed her the video, Mom, the one from my bachelorette party. It played on her wall screen. The whole office saw it. It probably has copies by now. This time the silence is different, heavier, final. You stupid girl, Lorraine breathes, and the venom in it makes Madison flinch. You stupid, useless girl. Do you have any idea what you've done? Yes, Madison says quietly. I've told the truth, finally. She hangs up before Lorraine can respond. The phone clatters onto my desk as Madison buries her face in her hands. Not crying, just hiding, or maybe finding herself in the darkness behind her palms. She'll destroy me, she says finally. No, she'll try, but destruction requires power, and hers is based entirely on lies. Once those lies are exposed, she's just a woman who stole from children and called it charity. What should I do? That's not my question to answer, but if you want advice, get a lawyer, a good one. Not someone from Lorraine's circle, someone independent. Document everything you remember, and prepare for things to get worse before they get better. Madison stands on unsteady legs. She looks around my office like she's seeing it for the first time: the awards, the certificates, the evidence of a life built on merit, rather than manipulation. I'm sorry. I know it doesn't mean anything now, but I'm sorry, for all of it. I know. She turns to leave, then pauses at the door. The trust fund, what was left of it. I'll sign it back. All of it. I never wanted money that wasn't mine. Keep it, I say, surprising us both. Use it to build something real, something that's yours. Consider it severance pay for 20 years of playing Lorraine's perfect daughter. Madison nods and leaves, pulling the door closed with careful precision. I sit in the sudden quiet, processing what just happened. Not the confrontation I'd imagined. Not the revenge I might have fantasized about in darker moments. Something messier and more human. My laptop chimes with an email. The Singapore team. Ready for our afternoon review. Real work. Real purpose. Real achievements that have nothing to do with family drama or decades-old wounds. But first, I save the security footage of Madison's confession. Not for vengeance, but for protection. For truth. For the investigation that's surely coming now that the first domino has fallen and taken Madison's poorly aimed shot with it. The Iron Ledger keeps perfect records, even especially when they write themselves. The boardroom at Kingsmere Hall has been transformed into a war room, 20 hours after Madison's confession played across my office wall. Lorraine has summoned what remains of her army. I arrive 15 minutes early, partly for tactical advantage, partly because I want to see her scramble. Douglas is already there, studying documents with the intensity of a man who's discovered his signature on papers he doesn't remember signing. Lucas sits at the far end, still technically family for another few weeks until the divorce finalizes. Madison huddles in a corner, Her lawyer beside her, someone young and sharp from outside Lorraine's circle, just as I advised. And Lorraine herself presides from the head of the table, still commanding despite the cracks showing in her foundation. She's dressed for battle in severe black, her jewelry reduced to weapons-grade minimalism. When she sees me, something flickers in her eyes, not quite fear, but its close cousin. "Now that everyone's here," she begins, but I cut her off. "Not everyone." I take a seat precisely halfway down the table. "Where's your lawyer, your accountant? The charity board members who should probably know their treasurer has been washing stolen funds through their donations." "This is a family meeting," Lorraine says tightly. "We handle our affairs privately." Fraud isn't a private affair, it's a public crime. The word crime hangs in the air like smoke. Madison's lawyer makes a note. Douglas looks up from his papers with something almost like surprise, as if he's just now realizing the legal implications of what his signature endorsed. "You're being dramatic," Lorraine says. Whatever Madison thinks she said in some drunken video. I pull out my laptop, connect it to the room's display system with practiced efficiency. "Would you like me to refresh your memory? I have the footage here. HD quality, very clear audio." "That won't be necessary." Lucas speaks for the first time. "We've all seen it, multiple times, since Madison's sorority sisters have been sharing it on social media since this morning." Lorraine's composure cracks slightly. "What?" "Bachelorette party video," Lucas explains with grim satisfaction. "Seems Madison sent it to her whole bridal party that night. They thought it was hilarious, the bride confessing family secrets while drunk. They've been posting clips with hashtags like #TrustFundTruth and charity fraud." Madison makes a sound like a wounded animal. I forgot I sent." "The internet doesn't forget," I observe. "Neither do forensic accountants, which brings us to why we're really here." I open my briefcase and begin laying out documents with surgical precision. Financial statements, transfer records, adoption papers with their telltale typography errors, the full weight of 20 years of careful documentation, organized and cross-referenced and utterly damning. "These are copies," I continue. "The originals are with my attorney. Additional copies have been prepared for the state attorney's office, the IRS, and the charity board, but I thought family deserved the courtesy of seeing them first." Lorraine's hand reaches for the nearest document, then withdraws as if it might burn. "You can't prove anything. These could be fabricated." By me, the iron ledger. I allow myself a small smile. My reputation is built on accuracy, not fabrication. Every document has been verified by independent forensic accountants. Would you like to see their certification letters? Douglas finally speaks, his voice hollow. "How much?" "From Madison's trust. Approximately $3 million over 20 years, adjusted for inflation. From the charity. I consult a summary sheet, another $800,000 in improperly claimed deductions and misdirected funds." "Jesus Christ," Lucas breathes. "But that's not why we're here," I continue. "Money can be repaid, crimes can be prosecuted. What we're discussing today is something more fundamental." I stand, move to the window overlooking the gardens where Madison and I once played as children, before the revision, before the erasure. For 20 years, you've controlled the narrative, decided who mattered and who didn't, who deserved love and who deserved leftovers. I turn back to face them. That ends today. "What do you want?" Lorraine asks, and for the first time in my memory, she sounds her age. "Money. An apology. Public humiliation. I want the truth, publicly acknowledged, formally documented, no more revision, no more erasure. Madison's real age and adoption circumstances, the trust fund theft, the charity fraud, all of it." "That would destroy us," Madison whispers. "No, continuing the lie would destroy you. Truth just hurts." Douglas stands abruptly, papers scattering. "I need to say something." We all turn to him, the man who perfected the art of saying nothing when it mattered most. "I knew," he says simply. "Not all of it, but enough. I knew the adoption papers were wrong, knew the trust fund was being drained, Knew Nell was being erased from our family history, and I signed off on all of it because he looks directly at Lorraine. Because I was a coward, because it was easier to enable than to confront, because I chose comfort over my daughter. Douglas, Lorraine warns, but he continues. No, I'm done. Done pretending this was about protecting Madison or maintaining family stability. This was about control, your control, and I let you have it because fighting you seemed harder than failing Nell. He turns to me, and his eyes are wet. I'm sorry. Not the qualified, conditional sorry I've been practicing. Just sorry, completely, for all of it. I know, I say quietly, but sorry doesn't change the past. No, but it might change the future. He pulls out his phone, and before anyone can stop him, he's dialing. Jonathan, it's Douglas Carter. Yes, I know it's Saturday. I need you to prepare a press release. No, not for the company, for the family. Lorraine lunges for his phone, but Lucas blocks her. The reversal is stunning the puppet master suddenly stringless, flailing. The Carter family will be releasing a statement, Douglas continues into the phone, regarding historical financial irregularities and steps being taken to address them. Yes, it needs to be comprehensive. Full disclosure. You're destroying everything, Lorraine hisses. Everything I built. Everything you stole, Madison corrects quietly. We all turn to her, surprised by the steel in her voice. That's what it was. Wasn't it theft? From me. From Nell. From the charity. You called it building a family. But it was just theft with better decorations. Madison's lawyer leans forward. My client is prepared to cooperate fully with any investigation. She'll testify to what she knows, provide access to any documents in her possession. Traitor, Lorraine spits. Victim, Madison counters. Just like Nell, the only difference is she got free and I stayed trapped. Lucas clears his throat. I've already provided my documentation to the authorities. Financial records from the wedding planning that show clear patterns of fraud. Lorraine tried to run the same scheme, inflated costs, redirected funds. I have emails, texts, bank transfers, all of it. The room tilts toward chaos. Lorraine stands, chair scraping against hardwood, her composure finally shattered completely. You ungrateful all of you, I gave you everything, the life you have, the status, the connections. Built on lies, I interrupt. Funded by theft, maintained by erasure. That's not giving. Lorraine, that's taking, and the bill just came due. She turns to me, and for a moment I see something raw in her expression. Not remorse, she's not capable of that, but recognition. Maybe. That the daughter she discarded, the one she was so certain would amount to nothing, has become the architect of her undoing. Fine, she says finally. You want truth. Public acknowledgement. You'll get it, but know this when I fall. I'm taking everyone with me, every dirty secret, every small shame, every crack in this family's facade. You think you're the only one I have files on. Do your worst, I say calmly. I've been surviving your worst for 20 years. I'm rather good at it now. Douglas ends his call. The press release will be ready Monday morning. We'll call a family meeting a real one, with media present, full disclosure, as Helena requested. And after that, Madison asks, after that, we face whatever comes, investigations, prosecutions, public judgment. He looks around the room, meeting each of our eyes. But at least we'll face it honestly. For the first time in 20 years, we'll tell the truth. Lorraine gathers her things with mechanical precision. I'll need my lawyer present. You'll need several lawyers, I correct. Criminal, civil, tax. I'd start making calls. She leaves without another word, her heels clicking against the floor in a rhythm that sounds like retreat. Madison follows, her lawyer's hand protective on her elbow. Lucas nods to me once acknowledgement. Maybe, or just goodbye before departing. Which leaves Douglas and me alone in the boardroom where so many family decisions were made without my input, where my existence was edited out of narratives and futures alike. What happens now, he asks. Now you live with your choices, as do I. The difference is, I've been living with mine all along. You're just starting. The Singapore project, you leave soon. 3 weeks. Might we have that dinner before you go? I consider this, the father who failed me, offering table scraps of connection after a feast of absence. But I'm not that hungry girl anymore. I can afford to be selective about what I consume. Maybe, I say finally, after the press conference, after the truth is public, after you've proven you can choose honesty over comfort, then maybe we can share a meal. He accepts this, understanding it's more than he's earned. As I pack up my documents, evidence returning to files, truth returning to folders, he asks one more question. Do you regret it, bringing all this to light? I pause at the door, considering. I regret that it was necessary. I regret the years of lies, the theft, the erasure. But exposing truth is just accounting by another name, and I've always been very good at making sure the books balance. I leave him there, in the boardroom that's seen so many of Lorraine's victories and is now witness to her defeat. Tomorrow brings Singapore prep, board meetings, the real work that defines me. But today, the scales finally balance. And the Iron Ledger closes her books on this particular audit. The Meridian Hotel's press room fills with bodies and anticipation. 3 weeks have passed since the boardroom confrontation, and the story has already broken in pieces. Social media whispers, financial blog speculation, charity board resignations. But today is the formal reckoning, the family's official statement, and the media smells blood in the water. I stand at the side of the room, not at the family table. That placement is deliberate. I'm here as Helena Carter Wells, acting COO of Armitage and Vale, not as Nell Carter, family ghost. The distinction matters now more than ever. Douglas takes the podium first, looking older but somehow lighter. Like confession has physical weight that dissipates once spoken. He reads from prepared remarks, each word carefully vetted by lawyers, but carrying genuine gravity. The Carter family acknowledges serious financial irregularities spanning 2 decades. His voice stays steady through admissions of fraud, theft, and systematic deception. He names amounts, he names victims, he names himself as complicit. Madison follows, barely recognizable from the golden bride of 6 weeks ago. Her statement is shorter but more raw, a young woman admitting she was both victim and perpetrator, manipulated, but also choosing manipulation. She announces her cooperation with investigators and her intention to repay what remains of the stolen trust fund. Lorraine doesn't speak. She sits at the family table like a pressed flower, all substance drained away. Her lawyers have advised silence, and for once, she takes good counsel, but her presence is statement enough the architect of lies forced to witness their demolition. Lucas isn't here. The divorce finalized yesterday, and he's already left for a position with our competitor, a clean break from both Madison and me. I approved his resignation myself, wished him well. Some bridges, once burned, light the way forward. When the formal statements end, reporters surge forward with questions. I watch Douglas field them with newfound honesty, watch Madison struggle through tears, watch Lorraine shrink further into herself. The microphones and cameras circle like carrion birds, feeding on the spectacular collapse of a prominent family. But I don't engage. My role here is witness, not participant. Ms. Carter Wells. A reporter has found me, ambitious enough to seek side stories. As the family member who exposed these crimes, how does it feel to see justice being served? I didn't expose anything, I correct calmly. The truth exposed itself. I simply stopped helping hide it. But surely you feel vindicated after years of being excluded from the family. I pause, searching for accuracy. Complete, not because of what's happening here, but because I built a life that doesn't depend on what happens here. That's the only vindication that matters. She wants more, they always do. But I'm already moving toward the exit. Singapore waits, a 14-hour flight to a new challenge, a new market, a new chapter that has nothing to do with the Carters or their catastrophic honesty. But Douglas intercepts me at the door. You're leaving, he says, not a question. My flight's in 4 hours. We never had that dinner. No, we didn't. He accepts this with a nod. We both know why his public confession doesn't erase private cowardice. Some reconciliations require more than words, and we don't have that kind of time. Will you come back, he asks. To visit, perhaps. To stay, no. My life is elsewhere now. I'm proud of you, he says quietly. I know I have no right to be, but I am. I know, and I do, but his pride, like his regret, changes nothing fundamental. Take care of Madison. She'll need an actual father now, not just a silent witness. I will. I'm learning. Late, but learning. We don't hug, don't shake hands, just nod at each other across the gulf of 20 years before I walk out into afternoon sunshine. The car to the airport is waiting. I slide into leather seats, watching the city pass in reflection and memory. Somewhere behind me, the press conference continues its controlled chaos. Tomorrow's headlines will be brutal. Next week's investigations will be worse. The Carter name, so carefully polished by Lorraine, will become synonymous with scandal. But I won't be here to see it. By tomorrow, I'll be in Singapore, building something new on foundations that belong entirely to me. The Iron Ledger has closed this particular set of books. Helena Carter Wells has other accounts to manage. My phone buzzes with a message from my assistant. Board approved your permanent appointment. Congratulations, Chief Operating Officer Carter Wells. Not acting, not temporary, confirmed by merit, not birthright. I smile a real expression, not performed for anyone's benefit, and respond, Thank you. Please schedule the transition meetings for next week, Singapore time. As we merge onto the highway, I catch my reflection in the window. Not Nell, the erased daughter, not the ghost at table 23, just a woman heading toward her future, carrying nothing but what she's earned. Behind me, the Carters face their reckoning. Ahead of me, Singapore gleams with possibility, and in this moment, suspended between past and future, I am exactly where I choose to be. The books balance, the ledger closes, the story ends where the real work begins. Because revenge was never the point, building something better was, and I've been building for 14 years. Now, finally, it's time to soar. Dear listeners, thank you so much for joining me on this emotional journey of Helena's story. I'm curious to know, where are you listening to this story right now? Are you driving, working, or perhaps relaxing at home? Please share in the comments below so we can connect and discuss what you thought about Helena's transformation and her ultimate triumph. If this story touched you, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that like button. And if you really want to help more people discover stories like this one, please hit the hype button. Your support helps these narratives reach others who might need to hear them. Until next time, remember, sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming the person they said you'd never be.